Do you know the one thing holding you back from greater success? No, it isn't goal setting. No, it's not grinding it out and working harder. It isn't even mantras and chanting those in your sleep at night. Stick around because we have a special guest today, Janell Warkentine, and she's going to go over some things that you may have not considered before on your path to trying to be happier and have more success and more fulfillment. She also gives my favorite thing at the very end, so stick around and listen to that all the way at the end. Enjoy. I want to have a discussion here with Janell, and I gave you the introduction before, and so we're going to just dive right into this here. And we're looking at what is it that makes us more happy, more fulfilled, and specifically what we're going to look at is emotions. Janell is a really expert on this and knows a lot about it. So I'm going to go through some things with you, Janell, and ask you just to kind of go over it, and I'll ask a lot of follow-up questions. The first thing is with shame. That's an emotion a lot of people feel. And what kind of benefit do they get from that? Or what is it that is resonating with people to stay in a state of shame or to go there sometimes?
Yeah, it's an interesting angle that you're coming at, looking at shame, the benefit of it, because we think, what benefit is there in shame, right?
Yeah.
But there is a reason our person has hung on to it. There is some sort of relationship with it that has caused us to stay in that relationship with that emotion. And it usually manifests as I'm going to take care of you. I am going to take responsibility for others. I am going to be that person that just goes the extra mile. But often, and not always, okay, because there's lots of people that are just, that's their gift, is to be givers. But we see, and I run into it in my clients, that if this characteristic of I tend to take responsibility for other people's happiness, and I tend to want to please them, but then when they let you down, or when they don't reciprocate or thank you, then you start having these emotions of I'm not enough. So the shame is driving a behavior to compensate for something that I feel deep down inside. And the body's storing that. I know you didn't ask me, but it's just part of it. It stores down in the gut. So we often see that we have some digestion issues with the emotion of shame. And how did it protect us? How did we become connected to that? Because by working and serving other people, we found some self-worth that shame had taken from us.
One thing that Tony Robbins talks about is the need to feel connection and love. And do you feel that sometimes with shame that it's a way, not a healthy way, but it's a way that people do connect to themselves?
That's a good question too. It's a way that they put salve, if you will, on a wound, on an emotion that's actually rooted in some trauma. So why do I have shame? There's been some trauma that has embedded or been kept in my body. And sometimes it's a trauma that I personally experienced, or an individual has personally experienced. And sometimes it's a trauma that genetically through my DNA is manifesting in my body now. And so it's a type of salve to try to ease that feeling, is how I see it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The next one I want to look at is another big emotion, because these are all big emotions.
These are big ones, yeah.
And that is on blame. Now, what is the benefits of blame? Why do we go there? There's got to be some kind of a payoff for us, even though it's not, our best outcome, but still we have either habitual habits or patterns that we do to fall into blaming. Can you talk a little bit about blaming and what is the root of that and what's causing that, and why do people tend to fall into that lower vibration? Because this is all about vibration, and like shame is really low. and blame is kind of partners with it. It's right there next to it.
Yeah. Yeah, we tend to blame when we are wanting to feel or ease a guilt. So we'll have often a guilt vibration in us or a guilt feeling, which, that again is stored in the gut, and that's connected to our identity. It's connected to our being grounded in who we are and how we accept ourselves. So you've got that little mixture of, am I acceptable? Am I enough? Guilt says I may not be. And if I can blame something else, then it doesn't shine light on this deep feeling that I'm not enough.
Yeah. Brene Brown talks about that blame is sometimes a way to get rid of pain or sad feelings you have, this kind of stuff. Do you ever see people doing that where they are shifting to blame to maybe have it be an escape mechanism, to take responsibility and put it on someone else? Those types of things.
Sure, I think that's exactly what I'm saying. I think it's a way of easing how I'm feeling. I feel guilt. I feel an embarrassment. I don't feel enough. And if I can put the focus on the weather, another individual, and it keeps me safe. A lot of these are a mechanism that was designed to keep us safe and in a not healthy way, in a low vibration way. But I'm not going to pour more guilt and shame on it. I just think, really, I think as human and in our human nature, to be safe is a need.
Yeah, and the next one I'm going to talk about is guilt, and that is just, these are all interconnected.
They're interconnected. They are.
And one thing I'm thinking about specifically is when you feel guilty, you're beating yourself up. You're kind of punishing yourself. And the thought that I have on that is that you cannot be guilty enough to get to happiness, or you can't beat yourself up enough to feel better. Just like you can't get sick enough to get healthy. And so with that, I was wondering, what do you notice with guilt? Do you notice any patterns there? Do you notice anything that helps people bounce out of guilt so that that's not a vibration that they're staying in?
Yeah, and guilt also can make us lash out. I've seen in guilt, and someone comes at me, it's a wound, and we can lash out. So we can either divert with blame, or we can lash out at people. Just that's what popped into my head as you were chatting about or discussing that. But like low vibration in general. So every one of these are rooted in a trauma, an event. So we can discuss and we can work around that emotion itself, or we can go back to the trauma that actually initiated it. And I think it makes more sense to go to the root of things, because I can pluck the flowers off of my dandelions growing in the yard all day, and guess what? In a day or two, I will just have a few more, and it'll just keep coming. So that's chasing or talking about a symptom. But if we really get down to a root and think, okay, what trauma? Where's that stored in the body? Where's this coming from? Let's work and heal that. And when I'm talking healing, I'm talking about looking for the emotional block. When we experience a trauma, we can store that memory, the experience, in our physical body. We're not only storing it in our thoughts. We have a memory, but we also store that in our body. So our thoughts may not be thinking it directly, but in the body, it creates a trigger. It influences the flow of our energetic body and the meridians within our body, which then influence our physical body. So also these things can manifest as physical challenges.
So when we're in lower vibrations, is it harder to heal, or does that really matter? If we're in a higher state, a higher vibration, is it easier, or does it not matter, in terms of healing? Because so far all we've talked about is low vibration states, and then you're talking about healing. Is it easy for someone in those states to heal?
In a low vibration? Yeah. Is it easy to heal? Is it easy to run when you have blocks of cement on your feet? No. It's a weight. And is it easy to climb a tree with several backpacks full of bricks? No. So or swim in a lake with backpack. Anything we go to do that takes effort, if we have excess carrying around with us, it's not going to make it easier. So if we're talking about our emotional well-being, our physical well-being, we're going to need to take a look at our energetic well-being and the impact that these emotional blocks, these energetic blocks, those are one and the same thing. If they're in our body, they are weights. They're blocking us. They're keeping us from functioning optimally. They're keeping our physical body from functioning optimally. Oh, they can keep our physical body from operating optimally. They're affecting our thought processes. So they're affecting how we think and translate experiences we're in right now, friendships, interaction with coworkers. It's affecting how we translate what's going on around us and how it's happening to us. Maybe we get, well, they're just doing that to me. All of these start manifesting in our actions. And so to really move forward and to feel, and I want to take a step back, it also separates us from who we really are. And true happiness, at that authentic, from the inside out happiness and feeling of thriving, is when we're connected to who we really are. That authenticness that's at the core. If we're really connecting to that part of us, and acting in that freely, then we are empowered. We are full of life. We are happy from the inside out, and it's not determined by whether people like us or don't like us, whether they're talking about us or not talking about us, whether they're joining us in this or not joining us in this. It's just not determined. This happiness is not affected by outside sources. It's coming from the inside out, and that's a powerful place to be. If you can be happy in that way, it's powerful. And the key to it is getting these blocks and healing blocks from our person, so that anything that's keeping us from it is just gone, and it's just, there we are.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. That's a really detailed answer, and it clarified a lot of things in my mind. Mm-hmm. I had more questions I was going to go through a list of things, like, for instance, apathy and anger and all these other kind of low emotions. But I think they boil down to fear, basically, some derivative of fear. And fear stops us from our dreams. It limits us. Mm-hmm. And it seems like ultimately the choice is either between a love-based emotion or a fear-based emotion. And we've talked about a lot of them so far. But I was wondering if you could just talk specifically about fear. And that's kind of like the big one overall there.
Yeah. It's our lowest vibration. Mm-hmm. Fear is the lowest vibration. And if we go back to and we look at, back in the day, so the day when we're living with dinosaurs and you're being chased down, fear kept you alive. There was a time in our primal existence that fear kept us alive. And fear today is not all a negative, because it still keeps us alive. I don't run in front of traffic because if there's a fear of getting hit. It's not a negative, but really the fear that stops our feet when we're wanting to move forward, the fear of being judged, the fear of stepping out on your own because, oh my gosh, what if I fail? Well, the other side of that, well, what if you succeed, right? So fear, we need to look at, fear will tag and have tied onto it guilt and shame. And we think, oh my gosh, I'm just so fearful. I'm afraid to step out of the house. Some people live with that. That's a reality. And right on it is, I feel so guilty and shame. I have shame around that. They ride together. And fear ties to our root chakra. And then you have guilt and shame, which is your next two chakras up into the body. So they correlate and they work together for us or not so much. But we need to look at fear in a new way. We need to look at when we have any kind of fear that we're working through or we can see in our life. I'm afraid to speak in front of people, anything. And you're like, man, I want to work past that. The first step to working past it is like, well, at one time in my life, that fear was protecting me. So it's really not my enemy. And even if it was through a lens of a child, you had an event that set a fear of stepping out in front of crowds. What could have happened? But that fear was like, that was so embarrassing, or whatever the event happened to be, I cannot get that I'm going to protect you from that. So that fear is a protector. Through the lens of a child, it made sense. But now that you're trying to and ready to move forward, we need to really see step one. We need to see fear not as our enemy necessarily, even though it is the lowest vibration. But we need to see it at the time it was our friend. And that starts to ease the guilt and shame thing. And then we can take a look at fear in the eyes and say, okay, great. Now, fear, at the time you were protecting me. Thank you. Thank you for helping me out. Now, let's give you a new job. I don't need that kind of protection anymore. What kind of protection do you need? Or what would you like that fear to have? What job would you like that fear to have? So fear can either go away, ask it to, that's done. I don't need that kind of protection anymore. And then you can just set up a new belief. And what do you really believe about yourself right now? And create that new understanding. And you can give that fear a new job and say, okay, I really want to be like, this is what I did for myself, because I was afraid of my several of my gifts, my intuitive gifts, because of my experience through the lens of a child. I saw them as, wow, that's so embarrassing, so overwhelming. So, and so I created this fear, and this fear protected me, and I just shut those down. And every time that was going to happen, I could shut that down because fear was there to remind me that's not safe. But as I'm wanting to develop who I am and really grow and raise my vibration, because your question earlier was, let's raise our vibration. Yeah. Well, we need to resolve these things. We need to work through these things to raise our vibration. And so as I address and talk to my fear, it's like, thank you for protecting me. At the time that made sense. But now I am an intuitive and I'm stepping out into who I am. This is my goal. Now, fear, you have a new job. You're to tell me when I'm not acting in my intuitive self, when I'm not interacting in my authentic self, because that's really protecting me now. That's your new job. And that was remarkable. And the more I find and grow through, because this is our journey work, the more we find and grow through the fears and the different guilts and shames and what fears connected to that, and doing the work, our entire physical bodies elevate vibrationally, and our emotional selves elevate vibrationally, and our energetic self. Well, what does that mean? That means you are overall healthier. Your well-being increases. My experience is that our well-being increases as our vibration. Do we get as sick as much? I don't believe so. Do we, are we as prone to feel and be influenced by other negative people around us? No, it's just your vibration can raise so much. It's like I heard a teacher of mine express, if you were in an airplane and people are throwing rocks at you and one another and you're up here in this airplane, are you going to care? No. If you're down on the ground, you might get nailed with one. You're going to care about it. Yeah. But as we raise our vibration, what influences us and what impacts us or sways us, what may have swayed us before, just doesn't anymore. And I have personally experienced that. Yeah.
You started getting into what I was going to go to, and that was the other side of the coin. Okay. Instead of all the fear-based ones and shame and guilt and blame and all that. And you started going into what I was going to go into, and that was how to get to these higher vibrations of love, for instance. Mm-hmm. So I want to look at love and talk about that. Not necessarily romantic love, but that's part of it. But just love in general, the concept of it. And it's so powerful. It's a state like when you are in love, when you love what you're doing, that type of thing, you are really in a high vibe state. It's very positive. However, the stuff I've read and looked at is most people are not in that state. The majority of the time they're in some kind of a fear-based state, unfortunately. So if you could talk about how do you get in a love-based vibration, emotional state, and then what do you do to kind of maintain that or stay in that?
That's a good thought there. Good question. Again, you're great questions. So to be in a high vibe love state, I want to talk about love because I went through this. I had the understanding, well, what is love? What does that even feel like? What's that look like? what's the high vibe? What's it feel like? And before we experience it, it's hard to really wrap your mind around. And we have a lot of social beliefs, and we've been taught this is love. And I recognized in myself that there's some of the religious teaching that I grew up in that this is, God is love. And I don't disagree with that. I think that's the purest source of love is divine love. And however you want to, word that is, really is a personal thing. But for me, that's how I'm connecting that ultimate source of love, pure love. The part I needed to sort through and understand was that there was a lot of guilt around, well, there's this love and you got to be that. Well, you're looking at yourself and like, but I'm not. Or, you strive and you try and there's a lot of rules that you got to start to follow. And all of a sudden, I found myself in a cage of guilt and shame. So it was the opposite. So I'm striving to be this thing up here. This is what I'm striving for. But what it created for me was more guilt and shame, which is back down into the basement of energy, vibration, right? And there I am. So I decided to change that. Let's take a new look at how this can look. And I'm seeing that it's about the vibration of love is about reconnecting authentically and being okay with who you are. Being okay with that authentic you and all that's vulnerable. Because the more authentic you reach that you get, the more vulnerable you are. Because now if something is said that it really is you. There's no screens, there's no walls that are like, yeah, you can say all you want, but that isn't me anyway, so whatever, right? But the more vulnerable you get, the more authentic you get, I guess, is the more vulnerable you are. And being able to work through the blocks, the trauma, the different experiences, and heal and bring healing. So releasing the blocks and bringing healing to the body and to the energetic body. Then you're connecting to that authenticness of you, that real you. And as you do that, then you start hearing what you really need. That's love. Because I can reach out to a good friend. I can reach out to you from the authenticness of me. And now I'm expressing I'm high vibing. Because this is the high vibe place. Well, what's high vibe? Love.
Love and genuine
love. And then when we're tapping into that divine love source, I'm not in this cage of rules to get there. I'm just allowed to let it be through me. Yeah. And I'm comfortable with it and I'm comfortable with me. So that's my view on that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. A lot of the stuff I've studied, they always talk about embody it. Like don't just think about happiness or study happiness, actually be happiness. And so in this case here, what you're saying is just be love. Just let it envelop you and just let it be who you are.
Yeah, so. When people hit a wall and think, oh, I just can't, instead of having the guilt and shame thing, which I was experiencing, it's take a look at, okay, honor and get curious. Honor, okay, body, okay, self. What's that about? Let's look at this together. It's a self-love moment. And I really feel that love at its highest vibe is about and involving self-love. I think that opens the door to that.
Yeah.
True love.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know if this is resonating with you and you want to work with Janell. She has courses. She works with people one-on-one in small groups, does lots of different things. We will put those links in this video here below. So if any of this is like, man, I want to get into a love state, or I want to raise my vibration, or if any of the stories she's talked about you've been just like, wow, that's me. I resonate with that. That's going on in my life. I want to make a change. Join her in her courses. We'll put the links in there because I highly recommend it. I've used some of the stuff myself and it's been extremely beneficial for me. I look at myself over the last few years and the involvement and the work with Janell has been tremendous. Just overcoming blocks, things that she talks to me a lot about flow. Like, you want to have flow. And whenever you have a block, that's going to stop you. Just think of a river and a dam blocking it up, and that flow, getting that block out of there, has just been crucial. So if any of this does resonate with you, click the links and look her up. You will definitely be glad you did that. All right, I want to go to the next question here, and that is on inner peace. Just like with love, we all know that inner peace and feeling calm and tranquil and centered is really important. But for so many of us, it's a state of vibration that we don't get to. Someone cuts us off when we're driving, or we get a bad grade or a bad review from our supervisor, or we don't make the sale, or whatever it is. Something on the external hits us and gets us out of that inner peace. And so I would like it if you could talk a little bit about how do we get to that state of inner peace, because the whole point of this video is about happiness and fulfillment, and it's all about your emotions. And so if you can raise your vibration, get into that inner peace, everything is going to flow better. Everything's going to work better.
Yeah, and I think the answer was in the question where you say, let's get the blocks out. Because what we're doing is we're giving ourselves more bandwidth. And we think, man, I want to be in that inner peace, dang it. You know, bleep, bleep, bleep. And so you go and you try, you do your thing, and then something happens. You're like, yeah, seriously, I was almost there. Not that I've ever experienced that. Yeah, right. So I think it's all about giving yourself more bandwidth. And the way we give ourselves more emotional and energetic bandwidth is by clearing up the blocks that are stopping the flow. Because peace is inside. It's when we connect deep inside. What is the counter of peace? Well, it's when we're in our heads and we are going how many thoughts a second? Bam, 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 bam. That generates, on the physical side, that generates electricity, because our brain is an electrical factory with all the neuro connections and communication in there. It's an electrical factory, and we just run our brains on hyperdrive, right? And then that affects and just is a domino throughout our whole body, and it affects it chemically and everything. And so that puts us in a, if you will, more of a fight and flight mode. So here we are. And so, I mean, I just won't go into that because I'll get off in the weeds, guys, if I start talking about the physical effects here. It's not inner peace. So letting the brain take a back seat for a little bit, letting everything that we do get put in a folder and say, yes, we will talk to you later. We will talk to you at this time. We will address this at this time. Set a time, put it on your calendar, whatever you need to. You will go back there. But for right now, I have nothing to solve. For right now, this moment I'm sitting in right now, it's just okay to be. So let yourself drop out of your head and down into your heart. Because where your heart is, there's truly peace. And the only thing that will keep us from finding that are the blocks. These blocks are highly influential in our well-being. So heal the blocks, remove the blocks. Thank you for those kind words about working with us in the program and how it's really supported you. That makes me happy. Good. Because, it's about getting to, everybody's an individual. So what are your blocks? They're individually yours. How do they want to be seen? How do they want to come out? How do they, what's the process? It's individual. What's best is very individual. We can't just say, oh, here's your cookie cutter. There you go. But the principle is that block, energetic, emotional trauma, and the blocks and the way they stop flow within our body, and the way that they separate us from our intuition, our heart space, our inner self, our truest self, all those go together, and those blocks keep us from it. So really, to get to that inner peace is about the healing. Yeah.
Thank you. I got a challenge for everyone. If this video, if you've liked it and you're kind of connecting with it and that, what I want you to do is take this challenge. And the challenge is notice what state you're in. Just notice it. So if you're in an angry state or fearful state or shame and guilt, just notice it. And then the second thing I'd like you to do is say, what is the payoff or what's the benefit I'm getting for this? And I think what you're going to notice is that you're going to have some kind of a benefit. Janell mentioned some of them. Maybe it's avoiding responsibility. Maybe it's shifting blame to someone else, and you can feel like you're, just the innocent person. It had nothing to do. There's going to be some kind of benefit. But what I want to challenge you is that instead of getting that small benefit, instead of getting pennies, think about, what would my life be like if I could substitute that out for inner peace or love, two of the things we talked about. Because if you could go there, you're going to take pennies and turn into $100 bill or $1,000 bill or who knows what, but it's going to have a significant difference. So that's the challenge for you, is to say, what feeling am I having? Just kind of notice it. Sometimes people will set their watch to go off at different times, and then what they'll do is just kind of notice or write down what feeling they're having. And then just being that aware, because that awareness and that observation is key, because you can't change what you don't know. So that's the first thing. And then just notice it and then say, what is the payoff? And there's always an opportunity cost. When I went to college in an economics class, they said, if you buy this car, you're not going to get this truck or something else. There's some kind of cost if you have X amount of dollars. So you have X amount of time in a day. And so if you're spending it in low vibes, what is the cost that you could be doing? What's the opportunities that are out there that you could be pursuing? So just kind of look at that, because once you start shifting your mind away from what you don't want and towards what you do want, it's that simple. It's that simple. We don't have to make it complicated, and you will start noticing changes. And it doesn't have to be like dramatic, but just slowly over time, you go where your focus is. Next, what I want to do you have any comments on that? Or
I just agree.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next, what I want to do is we have some questions that are just kind of random questions, but they're on this topic. The first one is on the lower vibration to the higher vibration, okay? When you're at the lower, it is said that it is more dependent, and when you're at the higher, it's more freedom. Okay. Can you kind of explain that? Like, why is it the higher you go up, the freer you are, and the lower you go down, the more dependent you are?
Because in the lower vibe and the dependency vibe, I am looking for someone else to validate me. I am looking for something else to validate me, to help me feel better about the shame I'm carrying around, or the guilt I'm carrying around, or I'm afraid and I am stuck here. If I'm in high vibe, I'm really connected, like we've been talking about. I'm really connected to who I am. I am operating in my purpose. I am operating in my gifts. I am empowered. And there's a freedom when I can work with you because I want to, not because I need to.
It's a choice then.
Yeah. Okay. And there's power and there's freedom in that. And then you can move on and make decisions based on that freedom that you have in being connected to you.
Excellent. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And a kind of a related one that popped in my mind was, if someone, you'd mentioned trauma, but if someone is injured or some kind of struggle they're trying to overcome, and they're in a low vibe state versus if you're in a higher vibe state, in terms of your health, will you be healthier in a higher vibe state, and also will you recover quicker?
Yeah, health is one of those interesting places, and anything that I'm saying is purely information. It's not diagnostic or something I'm saying you must follow, right? But it's information here.
And I do want to say emotional health.
Okay,
I mean emotional health.
Okay, because it affects our physical health.
Well, yeah, but I was thinking emotion.
But you're thinking emotion.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, we always want to do that disclaimer when we start stepping across that into the physical body. Yeah, so take me back to the emotional health. What's our question around that?
Well, because this whole topic is on your emotions and going from low vibe to high vibe and all this, and so
healthier?
Yeah, so I was just thinking you brought up the fact that people have trauma and these kinds of things. So that's emotional. Like if someone was abused or something happened years ago, that now it's in a memory, it's an emotion. We're carrying that forward. And so
it can even be a trauma. There's the big traumas, what are classified big traumas, but also it can be big to the individual when it happens. So that still could be a trauma. I struggle with reading. I'm a dyslexic with an auditory processing disorder. And so reading in front of a classroom Wasn't a trauma to most of the kids, but it sure as heck was a trauma to me, and that's been a big part of my healing process, was working through the fear, guilt, shame that was connected to those events in my life. And so being healthier, the higher vibe we get, the healthier we are. You bet that has been my observation and personal experience. Because we're not taxing ourselves. If I'm in these low vibes, remember I said our central nervous system, our whole body is just in this state. We're burning a lot of energy doing that. And those chakras responsible for those feelings, for our stability, for our, this is who I am, and that is our digestion area in those lower chakras. And so what we are energetically influences who we are emotionally, so our emotional health, but physically it does. It can affect our physical body, which affects our emotional body, because they talk a lot about the gut-brain connection. Mm-hmm. So there's that loop, there's that circle of influence. So am I functioning as well? So my immune system can be compromised? Am I producing the different hormones that are produced in the body, the digestion? Am I producing them in balance or in equal and proper amounts? It is possible that you're not, when we're in that lower vibration, because of the influence of that energy in our body, that low vibe. And there's a whole discussion and class that I do on that, because it's a big topic. Okay. But let's do the Cliff Note version. Okay. So, but the higher vibe we get, we are shifting how we think in that process, because we're taking a look, well, what belief is connected to that guilt, shame, fear? What's the belief? What happened to me? What belief did I adopt? So we're changing and shifting our mindset. We're growing in that area. And then the emotion is packed in that space based on the event. That's all packed in there, and that's starting to release and heal. So now are we carrying that tension, that stress? Because every event, every emotion and memory of that event, when we think about it, it exposes our body to those emotions. And so was it stressful at that time? You bet it was. And so our body's in this stressed mode, which zaps your energy, which zaps your immune system, which zaps, your basic well-being. So the healthier energetically we get, the healthier our mindset is, the healthier our emotions are, the more stable, the more vitality we feel, the more energy, my personal experience, and the more energy I have, the more bandwidth I have.
All right, excellent. The last question, and this one is a doozy, okay? We were mentioning this the other day, and it just blew my mind, because I was like, I did not realize the value and the importance of that. And this is, we are taught a lot of times, if we want to change something, we want to change our thoughts, right? There's been lots of books on that, lots of things, change your thoughts, change your world, all this. But there's something that's the precursor or even a stronger force than the thought. And it usually has lots of thoughts connected to this. And that's emotions, or an emotion. Yeah. So can you talk about the power of how an emotion is so much stronger than a thought? Because when you went over that the other day, honestly, I was like, I had no idea how powerful that was. Because I know how powerful thoughts are, but I didn't realize that emotions are even more powerful, and they're like thoughts on steroids, in terms of how it impacts you. Yeah, because emotion is self-created energy. That's the definition I like to go with for emotion. It's self-created energy. I have an experience, and I used to show horses. I've been a trainer at one of the hats I've worn, and I would take kiddos, and myself, and we'd go to horse shows, and we just had a great time. And I was in a series, and I won that series. I had a horse that I had bought and trained like I did. I did that for business, and then I showed him, and he was just a great guy. And so this was his second year with me, and our second season in the show ring, and we won it all. And he, I can feel that when I remember
I can feel how proud I was of him. It moves me to this day. The emotion, the experience, and what it felt to just receive that trophy, to receive those buckles, and he was there. And it's going to make me cry right now. Because emotion is connected to the experience. And so all the aspects that our senses experience, so what we heard, smelled, saw, felt, is all there in that package. It's self-created energy. And so our thoughts and our emotion energy part of us work tight together. So if I bring back the memory in my mind, it brings the emotion in full flood into my entire body. It doesn't stay in our heads. Emotion opens up throughout our entire body. The reverse happens. We store emotion in my body. So every time I see a horse or I see a ribbon on, in my ribbon box, and it touches that emotion, I'm exploded again. I'm just filled with this emotion, and it brings back the thought. So it does work both ways, but it's the emotion part that has the impact that really influences our body. So if it's around a really, what we would say, good moment, like me and my horse, that moment is fantastic for me. But it's the same principle. So it's a principle. It's not if it's only what we would call good or we would call bad.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like I said, I did not realize how emotions and at least my understanding of it kind of trump thoughts. And then how you just explained how they interact and work together so well. So powerful.
Yeah, and influence each other. In a powerful way. And emotion can they collect. So if I win several shows in a row. So I have a whole, which I kind of do, but I have a whole box and whatever of these of events that have been good for me, and connected to the horses. And that emotion grows and it builds, so that increases its impact on us. But let's apply that to an event that would have been labeled trauma for me. So I'm in the classroom, and every day for how many years are we in school, and I didn't realize and get the tools that I have now that allow me to really maximize my gift as being a dyslexic. But back when I was a child, I had this many years of trauma, and that memory and that emotional package accumulated, and they grow and become bigger and bigger and bigger. And so the coping skills that you put around that to move forward become, just like they become cages, but they're coping skills that are there to help you survive what seems like is surviving at the time. But that's all becomes an emotional block within our energy field. And that then is also called a trigger. So different things could happen. I could be called out on being wrong or being asked. It's not even being reading, but just called out, and it's like, well, you're wrong, and it feels a little bit personal. Then it hits this whole bundle of emotion. Had nothing to do with thought. Right. Had everything to do with this pushing on this, and felt similar. Not being heard was one of them. I wasn't being heard. No one understood me. So if I wasn't understood in any other area, it took me a long time to figure that out. It was actually pushing this huge bundle of emotion, self-created energy. And then that would explode through my whole body, and I'd have this reaction and think, man, why am I reacting so big? Well, that's a trigger. That's an emotional block trigger.
Thank you, Janell.
Yeah.
Thank you for all this. I appreciate you, Janell, for being here and getting interviewed. I'd also like to encourage you to work with Janell. I can tell you firsthand, she's done amazing results for me. I highly endorse her. Sign up for some of her programs. Check out her website. Check out the programs that she has. We've kind of gone into some of them, but again, it was just scratching the surface here. I hope that you too did get some value out of this in terms of how can I be more happy and fulfilled, and realize how important emotions are, and not staying in those fear-based emotions, but going more to the higher energy ones of love and inner peace that we talked about. And there's more than just those two, but I didn't want this to turn into a 3-hour interview. Anyway, thank you for joining us. I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Bryan. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, you're welcome, Janell.